Okay, so let's look at a slightly more complicated example using inheritance. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a student class or a student prototype. So function student gender and we're going to create students, and students are going to inherit from the person prototype. So to start out, we're going to set up a gender for student. And we're also going to have the student say hi, but the student's going to say hi in a different way. So the way the student's going to say hi is that they're going to have their own function. And the function's going to do a console log yo. Okay. Now, that would be fine. Like this would be fine if we just had a student that was independent of person, but we like the student to inherit all the members and methods that exist in, or they're accessible via the person prototype. So how do we do that? Well, what we do is this. We say student dot prototype equals new person. And then we say student dot prototype dot constructor equals student. Okay. Now, let's take a look at what that looks like all wired up. But before we do that, we're going to do one last thing, which is we're going to create a student, S1, and we'll say that's new student female. And we'll have the student do something. Okay, we'll say S1 dot say hi, and S1 dot say bye. We'll see what happens. Okay, so there's a lot of wiring that has to happen here. So I think in order to do the wiring, I'm just gonna draw a diagram. So the diagram is going to have, first of all, we're going to have S1 up here being our reference, and it's going to refer to a student instance because we said new student. So the student instance is going to have a gender, and in this case the gender is going to be female. It's going to have a say hi method, and in this case it's going to be a method that has a function in it that's going to say yo. I'm just going to make a little more space for my student instance here. And we also have a not a constructor because this is an instance, but we do have a link to a prototype, the link to the student prototype. Okay, so we'll take a look at that. So that's going to be something that refers to a student prototype. This is like the class that creates the instance. All right, so the student prototype's interesting. The student prototype gets created. We'll see what this looks like. The student prototype gets created that's not very nice. Go here, here. Okay. The student prototype gets created. Ugh, I don't like that. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right, so the student prototype gets created. There we go. When we do this new person, the act of doing new person creates essentially a person instance, but it's now treated as a prototype. And I told you this is a little weird, but that's how it works. So what happens is, since it's a set the wrong color here. Since it's a sort of pseudo person instance that becomes a student prototype, we're going to have everything that should be in a person instance. So if you recall, person instance has a gender, but in this case we're not setting it because we did a new person without any arguments. So this is undefined. There's a say hi method, and that has a function which is going to say hi. Right. There's also a say bye method, which calls say bye. And there's also a constructor, since this is prototype, and we set the constructor to be student. And finally, there is a prototype. And this prototype link over here was, get that way up there. This prototype link here is linking us to the student prototype. And this prototype link here, whoops, that's too high. I'm going to keep what we did here. Let me just move it up a little bit. This prototype link here is going to link us to which prototype, do you think? It's going to link us to the person prototype. And the person prototype is going to link us to the object prototype. There's nothing really interesting in the person prototype or the object prototype other than for the person prototype, it's the constructor for person. All right, so now that you see all the wiring that's here, let's look at what happens when we do s1.sayHi. Ooh, boy. My dog is really excited. Yeah, she wants to go for a walk. We're almost done talking about inheritance. Just hang out, Belle. Hang out for 1 second, okay? So, when you do S1 say hi, what's going to happen is, I think Belle's trying to say hi. So what's going to happen is we're going to follow the say hi method starting at S1, and we're going to look for the first time that we get a hit with say hi. And it turns out that we're going to get a hit with say hi when we look at the student instance. All right. So what's going to happen is this is going to say yo. And then we're going to invoke the say bye method on student, and we'll look at we'll look at the student instance first, and it's not in the student instance, and then we'll go down to the student prototype, and we'll search for say by there, and it turns out we find it. It's right here. So say by invokes the say by method, which is going to say, oops, it's going to say by. Okay. So that explains how, in the crazy world of JavaScript, how you can get inheritance to work. So it's not trivial. There's some wiring work you have to do to get it to all work together. Now I'm going to put up some exercises in just a second that show you how to, well, basically sort of demonstrate more of this inheritance behavior. All right. So, assuming that I have the following code and the diagram that you saw above, what is going to happen when I say student.prototype dot say hi equals say bye. Student dot class equals 2010. There S1 equals new student male. S1.GPA equals 4.0. S1.say hi equals function console.log howdy. And a little bit of code later. What's going to happen if I say student dot say hi versus S1 dot say hi, or student dot say bye versus S1 dot say bye, or student dot GPA versus S1 dot GPA, and finally student dot class versus S1 dot class. So what I'm curious about is if I were to do a console log for any of these, or I guess invoke these methods, or do a console log for the members, what would I see as output? So the best way to understand any of this really is to draw a diagram. So if I were to, maybe what I'll do is just make a little space here. So I have lots of space to draw the diagram. And we'll just say, this is a function which does, let's see, okay, we'll just do it here. So we're going to do a console.log. Okay, I've got lots of space over here. Okay, so let's look through the code, follow it, and see what happens. The first thing is we do have a student prototype. So let me draw a picture of that. That plays an important role. So student prototype. So coming in here, we're going to assume the code on the previous page has already been written and exists. So the student prototype is going to have gender, which is undefined. You know what I'm going to do is save a lot of time. I'll just copy it from the previous page. Let's go back. Amazing power of, yeah, let's just copy that. I don't have to do it again. You guys can print this out. Okay, so there's my student prototype. How do I copy here? Looks like copy. Let's go down to the next page. Oh, next page. And we'll park it here and say paste. I'll just move that over here. There we go. Awesome. Guess I could move this down even a little bit more because I'm going to need some room. Okay. And, okay, you know that the prototype refers to then a person prototype. And that person prototype refers to an object prototype. Okay? Awesome. Now, it's kind of hard to read. Tight. A little better. Okay. So, now, we say student.prototype.sayHi equals sayBye. So, what we're going to do is we're going to end up modifying the sayHi method, and we're going to put sayBye in here instead. sayBye. Okay, great. So that takes care of that. Student.class equals 2010. When you say student.class equals 2010, that is not part of the student prototype, right? It doesn't exist. The student prototype already exists. So when you say student.class, you actually do the following. You create a new instance called a student instance with the name student. And it's going to have a class value. And the class value is going to be 20. The class value is going to be 2010. And it has a prototype link. And the prototype link goes to the student prototype. Weird. Oh, also, we now have a student, two types of students. We have a student which represents a prototype, but we also have a student which is a reference to the student instance, which, by the way, it doesn't have a gender. So it's very weird because it never called the student constructor. Bell, no. Okay, now, the next thing we're going to do is create S1 doing a new student. All right, so we're going to invoke the student constructor. That means we're going to create a student instance. So that student instance is going to have everything that we would expect a regular student instance to have, which is we're going to have gender, male. We're going to have a sayHi attribute, which is going to be, at least initially, it's going to be something that says yo. It's going to be a function which says yo. And we're going to have, well, that's it. Also, we're going to have a prototype link. I'm leaving some space because we're about to add something to this. So we're going to have a prototype, and that prototype link is going to get us to the student prototype. Okay. Now, that takes care of that line. The next line, s1.gpa equals 4.0, that actually sets up another member called GPA in the student instance and sets that to 4.0. Let me write down that this is a student instance. And S1 is also a reference. So S1 is a reference to a student instance. Student instance has its prototype referring to the student prototype. All right. The next line says s1.sayHi equals a new function which says howdy. So now, instead of us having a function which says yo, we have a function which says howdy. All right. Okay. All right. So now we're ready to answer the questions at the bottom here, these questions, these 4 lines of code. What happens when you say student.sayHi? Well, when you say student.sayHi, it's going to invoke this sayHi method, which is going to say bye. When you invoke s1.sayHi, it's going to invoke this sayHi method, and it's going to say howdy. When you say student.sayBye, it's going to invoke this sayBye method, so it's going to say bye. And when you say s1.sayBye, it's also going to invoke this sayBye method, so it's going to say bye. When you say student.gpa, that's undefined. There is no student.gpa. It would actually refer to this student instance looking for GPA, and it can't find that. When you say s1.gpa, you're going to see 4.0. This is what s1.gpa is. When you say student.class, you're going to get 2010 because you're going to go after that class attribute. And when you say s1.class, you're going to get undefined. Wow. So that is pretty much, in a nutshell, the idea of how to use complex types to wire them together in an object-oriented fashion. So it's a lot more challenging than Java because you have to do all the wiring yourself. It doesn't happen automatically. So if you want to have some semblance of inheritance using JavaScript, you're going to have to do all this wiring together. It's really important to picture in your mind how these different instances and prototypes are wired together because they may behave in a strange way if you don't have this good mental model for how they are all connected together. So the big idea is you have to do the wiring. Another big idea is you can use the debugger that's present in JavaScript to kind of figure out what all this wiring means and look at it in real time. And I'll show you how to do that next.